My name is Ralph Ben-Murgy, and I host a podcast called Not That Kind of Rabbi. Basically, what I'm doing is looking for the spirit in people, what animates them to do what they do, and the kinds of stories they can tell. You know, people believe they don't have a story. Oh, no, I don't really have much of a story. And then when you talk to them or ask them questions, you'll find out everybody has a story and that they're all wonderful. I think it's a really good idea for us not to become parochial, not to just think of ourselves, the Jewish people this, the Jewish people that. So many people of different faiths and different inclinations have so much to offer to us as Jews, but also to the world in general. So I tend to look for the spark in people more than I look for the affiliation in them. To support our work at the CJN, go to thecjn.ca/donate. And if you're Canadian, you'll even get a tax receipt.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister.
Did you follow Justin Trudeau's announcement on Monday from outside his house in Ottawa that after 9 years as Canada's Prime Minister, 13 as Liberal Party leader, and 3 back-to-back election victories behind him, and despite his own personal inclination to keep on fighting, Trudeau realized that he's become so unpopular among his own caucus and at the polls that he's now a liability and he needed to resign, although he's not leaving just yet. First, a leadership race, which could take a few months, and Parliament's been prorogued until March 24th to give them time to handle that, which means lawmakers won't meet or pass any more legislation. And that likely signals the end for some key bills which the Jewish community has been pushing for, including cracking down on hate speech online and by religious leaders. Despite all the political turmoil, however, the CJN's learned that the widely anticipated antisemitism forum that Ottawa announced on December 20th will go ahead next month as planned. It's to be run by the Justice Department and by the newly minted Cabinet Minister Rachel Ben-Dayan, who joined Trudeau's cabinet the same day in a shuffle after Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland quit. Ben-Dayan was among several sitting Jewish MPs to publicly thank Trudeau after his announcement for his service to Canada. So did Julie Daberson and Yara Sachs and Ben Carr, even though Carr is one of the few Manitoba Liberals who recently called for Trudeau to step down. Montreal MP Anthony Housefather was also speaking publicly. In recent weeks, he's been urging Trudeau to resign. Housefather wasn't consulted when Trudeau made his announcement. He hasn't even spoken directly to the PM in a month, even though Housefather is Trudeau's special advisor on the Jewish community and antisemitism. But Housefather thinks Trudeau's leaving is a good thing because it'll give his party's traditional Jewish voters another good reason to stick with them now.
I think it's actually a great thing because I think many Canadians out there wanted change in the sense that they were tired of Justin Trudeau. Leaders have a certain shelf life in the social media age, and I think his passed, but they don't necessarily share the vision or like the leaders of the other parties either. And it gives the Liberal Party to have an option for them in the next election. I think it's a great thing.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, and made possible in part thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky Gluskin Charitable Foundation.
In a country like Canada, it should be, and it must be, safe to declare oneself a Zionist.
While Jewish issues and Israel probably didn't by themselves convince Justin Trudeau it was time to go, since October 7th, the Israel-Gaza war and how the government has handled it definitely have played a role in how many Jewish Canadian voters view the Liberal leader and his party's policies. We have 2 interviews on today's episode. Later, we'll hear from Jeremy Levi, the mayor of Canada's most Jewish town, Hampstead, Quebec. He is a Conservative supporter. But first up is Anthony Housefather. Housefather had actually been one of the first Liberal loyalists who broke with his party last March. It was thought Housefather himself might even cross the floor and join the Conservatives. But he stayed on. Housefather won his own seat 3 times and tends to run again for the Liberals. And he joined me from Florida before heading back to Ottawa for a caucus meeting. When did you learn that the Prime Minister was going to make the decision and announce it today or Monday? What do you make of that? Are you in support of this?
Of course, this is exactly what I had suggested and a lot of my colleagues had suggested. It allows the government to continue to function. It allows the Liberal Party to engage with Canadians and go out there and have leadership candidates offer Canadians a different vision of change for the next election. It allows us to have a robust debate of ideas on many issues, including how to tackle anti-Semitism. And we haven't had that debate for over 10 years because we haven't had a leadership
race. You have had leadership.
Race, yes.
Yeah.
A leadership race. Yes.
That's Freudian, though. Mm-hmm.
The last one was when Justin Trudeau won in 2013. It's a long time ago. And so this really offers a chance, I think, on the Trump relationship, on how to enhance trade, on how to be fiscally responsible, on how to improve our defense, on being proud to be Canadian. There's a lot of opportunities there for candidates to share a different vision. And me, somebody who has often disagreed with my party, gives me a chance to find a candidate and work with candidates to have them have visions that are more similar to mine. So I think it's an exciting opportunity.
Well, do you think that it's anti-democratic? Somebody at the press conference asked him about that. The country should have an election instead of having a long, drawn-out leadership debate.
But the election is scheduled for October of next year. There's a law that Stephen Harper's government put into place that has a fixed election date of October of next year. So I don't see why it's anti-democratic for the Liberal Party to choose a new leader.
You mentioned anti-Semitism, and many Jewish people in Canada have soured on the Liberal Party as well as on Justin Trudeau, as you well aware, for their stance on anti-Semitism here and in Israel. How much of a role, if any, do you think your statements and the criticism of the Jewish community that the Liberal Party didn't do enough after October 7th had impact on his decision?
Look, I don't know what all the factors were for his decision. I can only say that what I think is essential is over the course of the 10 years that Justin Trudeau was leader of the Liberal Party, there were many things that the Liberal Party did for the Jewish community that were incredibly positive, whether it's the security infrastructure program, naming the special envoy in anti-Semitism, adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, recently coming out with the IRA handbook, apologizing for the St. Louis. I think the Jewish community—
Holocaust monument in Ottawa, which they fixed.
Money for the Holocaust Museum in Montreal. And recently a number of
anti-Semitism forum, which may or may not happen now. That's the whole issue we have to talk about. But go back to your answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but I think again, the Liberal Party is, I still think, the best party for Canada's Jewish community. I think the question over the last year is that people have been disappointed in the way anti-Semitism has been handled by all levels of government. We've allowed the not good actions of municipal and provincial governments to be blamed on the federal government without an adequate response. But there hasn't been the tone from the top, the leadership shown at the federal level. This forum that we're having next month, I think, is the very first time the federal government is bringing together the provinces and the municipalities and the police to deal with an issue that's been preoccupying Canadian Jews for a year now or more.
And is that going to still happen while you're on this subject?
Yes.
It's not because it's proroguing and March 24th. That's still going ahead.
Still happen.
In the middle of a leadership race.
Yes, it will still happen. And what I think it allows, though, I think my presence in the caucus and my work on this issue will allow me to convince and prevail upon the other leadership candidates, all the people that are going to come forward to run for the leadership, to tell the Jewish community of Canada, I will insist on it for anybody I'm going to support, exactly what they think needs to be changed by the federal government in terms of a tone from the top, in terms of accepting all the recommendations from the Justice Committee that were put forward, which I think are excellent recommendations. Most of them came from me on how to deal with anti-Semitism at all levels of government. And I think that this will be a chance for the Jewish community also to hear what a new leader will do on Israel. I think you'll have people in this leadership race, whether Christy Clark, whether Chrystia Freeland, and others, that will talk about their own long histories of support for Israel. And I mean, Christy Clark, for example, has been to Israel twice since October the 7th. Chrystia Freeland, when she was Foreign Affairs Minister, had the best record, I think, of almost any Foreign Affairs Minister in dealing with Israel, right? I think this is a chance for them to come forward and explain how they distinguish themselves from what has disappointed the Jewish community over the last year. And then the Liberal Party new leader and our policies will be judged by Canadians, and each of us in our own ridings. And how we've handled it will be judged by Canadians.
Does this actually help you now that he's going to be stepping aside? How does this help you in Mount Royal?
So the last poll that was done, the only poll, riding poll that I know of in Mount Royal, was a Main Street poll in December that had me ahead by 14 points. Where I know in Mount Royal, many people are voting for me who would otherwise soured on the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party. I think this is incredibly helpful for me personally, in the sense that a lot of what I was getting at doors was, I really don't like your leader, I really don't like your leader, I really don't like your leader. I like you, I'd like to vote for you, I don't like your leader. So this is positive for me, and it's probably positive for most Liberal candidates across the country, in the sense that the Prime Minister was going to be the defining ballot issue if he stayed as leader for many Canadians, and now it will be something else. It doesn't, it doesn't mean the Liberal Party is automatically going to win the next election or is going to win the next election. I think it means that we will do much better and win way more seats in the next election than we probably would have had Mr. Trudeau stayed as leader.
So you mentioned Liberal candidates for the Liberal Party leadership. Have you started receiving calls from some of them? Who would the Jewish community be interested in supporting?
Well, the main thing that I would say is every member of the Jewish community in this country should sign up as a registered Liberal. It costs nothing, and be able to vote in the next leadership for a candidate who will be the most attuned to the interests of our community. I encourage everybody to go to that website and sign up, because you should have a voice. Every riding has 100 points, and the more of our community members that sign up and vote and prioritize the candidates, because it's a preferential ballot, that are the most supportive of our community, that's what we should do.
I want to ask you back to what happened in December, I think it was the 6th or the 9th, when Chrystia Freeland dropped the bombshell and said she was leaving. Were you surprised by that? And second question, did that tip the scales and was that what did it, do you think, in your opinion?
So I think it was a combination of things. Let me start with the second question. I think I had been calling for his resignation, since September, October, but there wasn't the outcry from caucus until Chrystia's resignation letter. And that emboldened many caucus members to join those of us who had asked him to step down. And I think that made it inevitable. So I think her letter was the catalyst for what happened. And in terms of what happened, was I surprised? I think everybody in Canada would be lying if they didn't say they were surprised by a letter that was given on the date of the fall economic statement. But given the circumstances of everything that evolved, I think it was very understandable what she said. I think Chrystia clearly had a different vision of the finance portfolio than the Prime Minister's office did on a number of very important issues. Obviously, I can't speak for her, but I know that Chrystia is a strong ally and friend of Israel, an incredibly strong ally of Israel. And I doubt very much she agreed with decisions that were being made by cabinet about Israel over the last year. But when you're in cabinet, you have no opportunity to say publicly that you disagree. And now this leadership contest will give her and others the opportunity to lay out their vision about our relationship with Israel. And again, what they feel about the government's record on the Canadian Jewish community, they are going to change, and how important is it to them to do so. And I think we're going to be surprised as a community how much our community will come up in this Liberal leadership race in terms of the discussion about antisemitism and how the contenders would have handled it differently than the government has over the last year.
Okay, so that tipped it over. Have you talked to him since about your issues or anything?
I have not had any personal meeting with him since that date.
Okay, is there anything you want our listeners to understand about how you're personally feeling? It's a long time to have somebody in your life, and now there's a transition coming, whether it was too late or not soon enough for some people. How is this day sitting with you?
Look, I think I'm very positive about the future, but I think I have to recognize it's a really difficult day for Justin Trudeau, who's somebody that I have known for a long time and I have a lot of respect for. whether or not I always agree with him, I have a lot of respect for him. It's not easy doing this job. It's not easy, getting threats and putting yourself in the public eye and being dismissed all the time. And, there's a lot of glory in being prime minister, and there's a lot of difficulty in being prime minister. And I was, I'm really struck by how many people on a day that somebody leaves go off and attack them and are personally insulting to them, as opposed to recognizing and respecting what it is that they've done and achieved. And I think on any day that somebody leaves or somebody passes away, the Jimmy Carter thing is a perfect example where, Jimmy Carter, whether we agree with his positions on Israel or not, over a century gave himself to his country. And I thought it was appalling to see people from our community coming out on the day that he died and attacking him. And I think I think it's equally appalling today to be attacking the Justin Trudeau. I think that there's days for attacking your opponent and there's days for giving respect. And today would be one of the days of giving respect. And I also think actually this gives the new Liberal leader a great opportunity to show Canadians they can disagree without being disagreeable. I think there is a vast majority of Canadians, including in the Jewish community, that do not like people who insult their opponents, who belittle their opponents, who come up with nasty nicknames for their opponents. And I think that is what we have with the leader of the opposition. And I think that it is now a chance for the new Liberal leader to show that they're equally supportive of our community, but can do so in a mature way. And I think there's going to be a lot of openness to that. I'll end by this. We both know Adam Shire, the rabbi at the Sharp, and he once shared with me something really wise. He said he judges a politician based on, what it is that they promise to do, but being able to do it in a way that doesn't attack their opponents when they talk about themselves positively and what they're going to do. And I've always tried to judge my colleagues based on that as well. I really believe partisanship is wrong. You've got to try to work with people across the aisle as much as possible, because that gives you your best solutions. And I'm hoping that the next leader will be somebody like that, who will share that perspective.
They go low, we go high, or to import something from south of the border from previous leaders. Right, but this is unfortunately there's flags with F Trudeau on it, and he got death threats and stones thrown at him, and you've had your own encounters with physical and online safety issues. It's a terrible world out there for politicians. And
where it's make worse, Ellen, again, is those politicians that do it to other politicians. It is perfectly valid to make your point and to disagree. You do not need to personally insult and attack your opponents in order to do that. And I encourage everyone watching or listening on CJN to go to the social media feeds of those politicians that they think they support and look at their Twitter feed and look at their Facebook feed and Instagram feed and see if they're out there being constructive and talking about a positive vision, or whether they spend every day attacking and insulting their opponents because they're in a different political party. If they do that, my feeling is they're not worthy of your support. And I can suggest people do that.
Well, it's a different style of politics now, but people are angry and they don't care on social media.
When people are angry, politicians who ferment their anger for their own partisan interests don't advance the equation. All they do is cause other politicians to get death threats and hate. And all they do is make people angrier. And again, I will never buy into that vision. I think that we all have to be better. And I love that Michelle Obama saying that you used, Ellen. I hope the country is on a higher plane a year from now than it is today.
Are you speaking to him? Have you planned to?
I'll see him on Wednesday. I think today he's probably inundated with people reaching out to him, and I'll have the opportunity to see him on Wednesday.
And what are you going to say?
I'm going to say thank you for all of the years of service, and and I really appreciate what you've done, and and I hope all the best for you and your family.
Okay. Thanks, Anthony. Have a safe trip back. We'll see you again.
Thanks, Ellen.
I'm Michael Weisdorf, Chief Executive Officer with the Canadian Jewish News. We've put a lot of effort into trying to engage with the younger audience and the younger demographic, those who haven't really engaged with the CGN recently. They don't realize we're back. They say, I absolutely remember reading this on my Booby and Zadie's dining room table or my parents' den. We're trying to bring the Canadian Jewish News into the 21st century. The Canadian Jewish News is a not-for-profit organization, and we're also a registered journalism organization with the CRA. So we can provide tax receipts for donations at any level to help support the Canadian Jewish News and help us continue providing free, high-quality journalism for the Jewish community. You can support us at thecjn.ca/donate. Thank you for your support and for being a part of our journey.
Trudeau's decision not to have an election right away infuriates federal Conservatives, including the mayor of Hampstead, Jeremy Levi. His town is 63% Jewish. All the elected councillors are Jewish as well. And since October 7th, the mayor's been a vocal critic of the Liberals, of Trudeau, and of Anthony Housefather, even though the town of Hampstead is located in Housefather's federal riding. But Levi has been a frequent critic of Housefather for not quitting a party that betrayed him. Levi is openly supporting Housefather's rival, Conservative candidate Neil Oberman. The mayor joins me now. I want to hear your personal feelings today, having watched Trudeau's. Did you watch Trudeau's announcement, or you read it?
Yeah, I watched the resignation live on TV, or, I shouldn't really call it a resignation anymore, because that's not what it is. I mean, it's smoke and mirrors. It's really a very eloquent way of him telling Canada that he has no intention of running in the next election. He's still leader of the Liberal Party. He's still Prime Minister of Canada. And that will remain so until there's an election, because, even though he prorogued, or he asked the Governor General to prorogue Parliament today until March 24th, he's very well aware that as soon as Parliament resumes, there will be a non-confidence vote. The House will be brought down, and there will be an election. So it's
a Pesach election.
There you go. Exactly. So, for all intents and purposes, it's smoke and mirrors, but it's very representative of the way he has conducted himself, more so in the past year, and very much over the past 9 years, saying one thing to Canada with a smile. He went on the air to basically pretend that he was resigning. But that's not the case. And to me, we're going to get more of the same based off of the potential candidates that have already either through the grapevine or leaked out that they had intention of seeking to be the Liberal leader. I don't think this changes much in the whole scheme of things. I think right now, what the Liberal Party is trying to do is to position themselves to become the official opposition and not third or fourth party status.
I heard someone today, an insider, say they're trying to save some of the furniture.
Yeah, that's a great saying. Based off the last national poll that came out, I think they were projected to have about 6 seats. So, there's no chance of them maintaining government. Basically, they just want to stop the bleeding at this point and save whatever they can. And like you said, save the furniture.
But you tweeted a few days earlier that they were going to prorogue, and you didn't think that was a good thing for democracy. Can we discuss a little bit, unpack those feelings?
Sure. This is not the first time that Justin Trudeau has prorogued Parliament. He did it back in 2021, and he sees the writing on the wall right now, finally. Many Liberal MPs see the writing on the wall, but it's unfortunate that they see it way too late. It's very clear, based on all the polls, based on all of the social media posts of all Canadians. I'm not just talking about influencers or political junkies, or everybody from A to Z along the Canadian spectrum wants an election. And all the Liberal MPs, and I'm not just talking about the ones in cabinet, all the Liberal MPs are doing everything that they can to prevent an election from happening, because they know that there is going to be a major turn of political, societal, and economic direction in the country, and they're doing everything that they can to prevent that. And that is not democratic. If Canadians want an election, if they want a change of direction, and the minority government is no longer working, then there should be an election.
You said Canadians. This is a Jewish podcast, so I want to narrow the focus a bit and ask you to explain to our listeners, as a representative of a large Jewish population, how this personal journey has been for you, representing, as we're watching the Liberals and how they deal with Jewish issues.
So I would say for a very, very long time, I have been a conservative, but it's only this past year that I have publicly released my political positions. And I did that because I really believe that anybody who's in any type of position of influence or power, no matter how little of that influence that is, should try to put their views out there to let other people know what is going on in the country, because most people do not pay attention to politics until an election. And if you're in it, you understand it, you know what's going on. If you don't, you're just like, okay, you know what, I'll do what I did last time. And for the vast majority of, I would say, the past, 80, 100 years, most Jews in Canada have been liberals. And I would say in the past 9-10 months, vast majority of Jewish Canadians have switched over to conservatives. And it's not so much that they've switched over to conservatives. Their values have remained unchanged, and the liberal values have changed dramatically, and the conservative values are more in line with the average everyday Jewish Canadian. So I wanted the public to be aware of my views. I don't shy away from it, and most of my constituents in Hampstead, the ones that I speak to, and are very much supportive of Pierre Poilievre becoming the next prime minister.
But is it because of Israel and anti-Semitism and Jewish community issues, or is it other things like the economy, housing, all his, the other non-Jewish issues?
The primary factor is definitely Israel. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, but once the back was broken, you start looking at all this other stuff. You start analyzing more in detail of what's going on. They were like, that's the right direction. That's a good fit.
I mean, your town council passed a resolution of non-confidence in the government after March 18th, which is a unique thing. What does that say? What message does that send?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it was passed unanimously. And just last month, we passed another resolution unanimously condemning Justin Trudeau's comments about allowing Canada to go through with the ludicrous ICC arrest warrant of Bibi Netanyahu. And, we called on, so, I mean, it's not just me coming from a mayor. It's, certainly I'm not going to say that this is the voice of the Council of Hampstead, but, if you read between the lines, you see what all the councillors are voting for, and it's across the board, it's unanimous, you get a certain idea of where we're headed. And Hampstead, I don't know if you're aware, but Hampstead is the highest concentration of Jews per capita of any municipality outside of Israel. Even though we're a small town, we are a very solid representation of the average Jew across Canada.
Let's go back to politics for a second. You've watched how the announcement was made, and now all the scrambling happens, right? There's going to be a Liberal leadership race. Is there anyone that you would support or is better for the Jews? Anybody that
Absolutely.
You wouldn't want at all touched with a 10-foot pole, chas v'chalila?
To me, it makes absolutely no difference who's there. You're just putting the same policy with a different face. If you go back to, you quoted some of my social media posts. If you go back to some of my social media posts over the past year, basically my positions have remained unchanged. I have been very public, outspoken, very critical, very controversial at times. I stand by everything that I have said. I have not wavered or changed on anything that I said. Now, contrast that with some Liberal MPs. Go take a look at what they've said over the past year to media, on social media and whatever, and how they have changed.
So be specific.
Okay, so, we could talk about Liberal MPs that, have really, on one hand, supported the Jewish community, support Israel, have vocally spoken out against the Liberal Party's anti-Israel positions, but then stood by Justin Trudeau all along, conveniently, once Chrystia Freeland publicly and hastily resigns, then, everybody can share their positions publicly. So I think there's quite a bit
You're
of...
You're talking about Marco Mendicino and Rachel Bendayan and, of course, your MP Anthony, which we don't need to get into all that, but yeah.
That whole Liberal crew, absolutely. There are some current MPs who are seeking re-election who agree with proroguing Parliament to save their own seat. If they really believe that they can win, if they really believe that they are right to support the Liberal Party, no matter who the leader is, then call for an election. But I think people are so dissatisfied and so disgusted with the positions that the Liberal Party has taken, because it's not just Justin Trudeau, right? I mean, he's one vote. And to be honest, we might get somebody who's more radically left as a leader than Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, like Melanie Joly, for example, because exactly. That's the point. A lot of people are saying, God forbid she gets in as the leader, although it's unlikely. But so what are the expectations now from Canada's Jewishest community and the Jewishest, most loud Jewish mayor?
Sure. So for the life of me, I can't understand how any Jewish organization whatsoever would applaud, support, any way whatsoever, the Liberal Party of Canada. So, if I had the power of uniting all these Jewish organizations and giving clear direction, that's what I would do. Don't pretend to be politically correct, because anybody who's going to be politically correct in today's era where anti-Semitism is out of control will fail. And we've seen that time and time again. With all due respect to the special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, I think that is a waste of taxpayers' money. I think all of these bureaucratic offices that are built just to give off some kind of impression that they are actually doing something is not helpful. As a matter of fact, I think it's counterproductive, because it gives off that aura that, yes, something is being done. But, since Irwin Calder left the position of Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism, what has Deborah Lyons accomplished? What has successfully, yes, it's a very difficult position considering what happened since October 7th, but if you can't do the job, and you can't do the job well, and you can't really make any difference, what are you doing?
Will Canada be better off for Jews after today? Or how do you feel about that? Is it good for the Jews or bad for the Jews? What happened?
Well, not after today. I think after today, it'll be indifferent. It'll only start getting better for Jews once there is a conservative government. Because the Liberal government they had their chance. I mean, they showed us since October 7th their true hand. So anybody who believes them after this, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Well, it'll be 4 times, yeah. But it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for giving us the time today and joining us on the CJN Daily.
Okay.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily. Trudeau's announcement sent Jewish political leaders into high gear. In the last few hours, B'nai B'rith Canada isn't mentioning any party specifically, but is urging a speedy transition, so the government is working at full speed to tackle the serious issues Canada faces. The Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs, or CIJA, said the community overwhelmingly feels it's an opportunity for urgently needed policy changes, including fixing Canada's relationship with Israel and, quote, doing something concrete to combat the rise of anti-Semitism, extremist protests on our streets and campuses, and attacks against Jewish institutions, unquote. Our show is made possible in part thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Our producer is Zachary Judah Kaufman. Our executive producer is Michael Freeman, and the music is by Dov Beck-Levine. What do you think of Trudeau's decision? Love to hear from you. We're at info@thecjn.ca.
Right after October 7th, the CJN really had a challenge of how we were going to cover what we knew was going to be the most important story, likely of our journalistic careers. And we think about What are the stories that we uniquely can tell? We have strong and deep ties and relationships in the community. We can go to the same event that everyone else, all the mainstream media will cover, but we will cover it differently. We'll cover it smarter because we have an understanding of the context and the nuance of the communities that we've worked in. My name is Lila Sarek, and I'm the news editor at the Canadian Jewish News. The CJN wants to continue to cover important stories across the country and important stories in Israel as well. And we can only do it with your help. Visit thecjn.ca/donate to support our work. And if you live in Canada, you will also receive a Canadian tax receipt. Thank you.